We were blowing up an engine on the test stand, like almost weekly. Test early, test often, fail early, fail often. Ask for the meeting with the CIO. Just go pull him into a room and the VP of software. You're constantly negotiating the teams around you, the people around you, and you're selling. It's about our customers. It's what we enable. It's what we empower. I consider ourselves infrastructure to all of this really exciting activity happening in the marketplace. I want to know the answer.
Just get to it.
I get to it. I'm looking for results.
Yeah.
I'm looking for outcomes.
Karan, welcome to We the Builders and Detroit. Glad you made it finally.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Awesome event. Past few days.
Yeah, it was like a great group of people. I think the reindustrialized folks did a great job. And it's just like a great reunion of the industry because...
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't go 5 steps without running into somebody, either like an investor, customer, prospective customer.
Yeah.
It's just like convergence. It was high density.
Great convergence.
Yeah.
So you are building this company, First Resonance. Tell me a little bit more about, who is Karan and what is First Resonance?
Yeah. Well, I'm Karan Talati, CEO and co-founder of First Resonance. Of course, that's more of my identity these days. I'm many more things outside of that. Maybe we could talk some about that. First Resonance, we build a factory operating system now powering nearly 60 companies in mission critical industries like aerospace, defense tech, increasingly energy, such as nuclear energy, heavy machinery, robotics. It's a platform that helps these companies manage the day-to-day operations in their factory, supply chain, and quality. Pretty large surface area. It's basically the workflow and kind of the bits and bytes that fly through the factory to make sure that good designs get into the process, good products get built, and we can manage all the chaos that inherently happens in the physical world and in these dynamic environments in factories.
Right. And how much have you raised for it? So what stage are you at for the audience who don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've raised about $30 million to date. We're about 50 people based in Los Angeles. Between Series A and B, just in terms of stage. And we've been building the company for about 6 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned you're a lot more things. So tell us more about, how else would you describe yourself? This is the current identity. CEO of, and co-founder of First Resonance is the current identity, but how else would you describe yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a husband, been married for about 6 years. Been together with my wife since college. So
you started the company and
you
got married at the same time.
Actually, yeah.
Those are two things that usually, are not recommended together.
That's right. It was a big year. Got married and started a company in 2019. Yeah. So been with my wife now since college days. So we're like college sweethearts, 14 years more now. I'm a son, curious, but mostly, outside of work, I like to stay humble and just take care of myself.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy. Yeah.
How was it like balancing marriage with startup life?
Oh man, it has been a journey.
Tell me more.
I think startups are a journey in themselves, and the roller coaster of building a company, starting a company, going right into a pandemic, to come out and raising money in a pretty chaotic environment over the last few years. All of that has its mirror, at home, right? So it's been an incredible journey actually to, learn more about myself and to build this marriage, I think, in kind of in reflection of this startup. Huge kudos to my wife, my number one supporter. Couldn't be anything without her, really.
Was it an adjustment in the beginning? Because it's very demanding hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it was an adjustment. I think, my wife has kind of she's always known me, right? And seen me evolve since college. And so I ended up out here in, not out here, we're in Detroit right now, but I ended up out in LA about 12 years ago to work at SpaceX. And, being at SpaceX is, kind of has its intense hours as well.
Yes.
So we were kind of already rooted in what startup life would look like in some ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to build a startup, just go to SpaceX, and your significant other can find out what your life will look like.
It's a great proving ground.
great prerequisite.
Yeah.
How did you end up at SpaceX?
It's really kind of serendipitous. I went to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and one winter, the Technology Entrepreneurship Center there took a group of maybe 30, 40 people out to Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. So it was just a whole bunch of, students from one of the best engineering schools in the country just flying out to the Bay Area. And I met somebody on the trip, Jason Roslin. Got to know him. We were both mechanical engineers back at school. Once we got back from this Bay Area trip, we kept in touch. And he said, hey, spent the last summer at this one kind of aerospace company in LA. You should come hang out with me this summer. I was like, oh, what's it called? I hadn't even heard of SpaceX at that time. Keep in mind, it's 2012.
Right.
Huge contrast, right? Most people didn't know what SpaceX was, anywhere. And so I took a shot. I was graduating that year. My parents really wanted me to find a good, safe, full-time job, stay near home. I did everything. I did the opposite of all of that, right? Basically took the chance, rolled the dice, took an internship, even after graduating. Because at that time, this was kind of like SpaceX's test. Mm-hmm. They brought you in as an intern. It was a try before you buy kind of situation. Yeah. And didn't think I'd end up in LA, where I thought, it was all Hollywood and at most some consumer tech, right? But of course, the rest is history. Got there that summer. That's really when SpaceX was just about to enter like a huge inflection.
Right.
So it was an incredible ride for the few years that I was there.
What was your role at SpaceX?
So my role at SpaceX was the guy that was connecting all these nuanced workflows from engineering into production. And at that time, SpaceX was going from being a company that had built one rocket and it had worked, and it was really like, a huge feat of bringing this one thing together into an operation.
Can you give a macro picture of where SpaceX was in 2012?
Yeah.
Versus, now everybody's familiar. It's bigger than any national space agency in the world.
Yeah.
They're doing more than 100 Falcon rocket launches a year.
Yeah.
But that's not the SpaceX of 2012. So where was it? And, how did you is it just the macro and then?
Absolutely. Yeah. So to pull it back, in 2013, that summer, there was, everybody that was there then even still talks about it right now, Flight 6, which was the Falcon 9 rocket as we now know it. Flight 6, which was the first Falcon 9 that had the Merlin 1D engines and a whole bunch of other configuration changes, huge design feat that went into what would eventually become the blueprint for the rocket's evolution since then. And even today, Merlin 1D engines power the rocket, et cetera. And, like I was saying, it was all hands on deck it was years of design and development work that went into Flight 6. We flew it, and at that time we were probably flying like 3-4 times a year, right? So to your point, now SpaceX is flying a Falcon 9 maybe twice a week, sometimes, doing 2 flights on opposite coasts on the same day, right? Let alone doing a massive test for Starship in Texas, multiple operations going on, where at that time, we were doing like one thing a quarter.
Right.
Yeah. So huge. And that's what I was saying is like, doing Flight 6, it was all hands on deck. We were flying maybe a few times a year. 2013, 14, 15, that's really when we went into, we got to operationalize this. We're going to have an engine assembly line as opposed to just like a shop for building one engine at a time, right?
Right.
So got to see all that, like turn from like this crazy, chaotic, traditional way of doing it in aerospace,
Right.
which is this kind of radial manufacturing process where
Right.
people come in and out, install things, uninstall things, fix things. It's this kind of format to going into one where the rocket was actually assembled through an assembly line. And a lot of that was actually due to Elon bringing in people from the automotive world to actually design the process and to bring in those principles of what is an automotive assembly line
Right.
and bring aerospace closer to that.
Or was it like the crossover between Tesla folks coming over to SpaceX, or just generally automotive people coming into SpaceX?
Really good question. You know, actually at that time, there was a lot of shared learning going on between SpaceX and Tesla, but key people were actually coming in from traditional automotive, because keep in mind as well, this is really, you know, I think about this a lot. The first Model S rolled off the production line in 2012. So you think about just the era. This was just the first.
That is true. Tesla was also in his infancy as a company. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Yeah. There's no Model 3, there's no Model Y announced, right? No even inkling of that. The first, this was a very like novelty kind of vehicle still just rolling off the production line. So look, there was a lot of shared learnings, but even at that time, to your point, Tesla was in its infancy. It was learning a lot from people from traditional automotive.
Right.
And so we were too at SpaceX.
What in that time, I think one figure that doesn't get talked about enough, and I don't know how much interaction you have with her, Gwynne Shotwell.
Oh yeah.
What did you learn from her as this business, megastar?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Unsung hero, powerhouse. I think also I have like a special connection. When I was just joining SpaceX, Gwen did a talk with some of us that were new at that time. And I learned then that she was actually, she went to high school at my rival high school. So we're from like the same area in like the north suburbs of Chicago. So the world is a lot smaller than you would think. But, you know, I think, even to this point, even as a SpaceXer, she was such an unsung hero, but she got things done, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what I learned out of that also was just what nuanced relationship can lead to the outcome. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was pre-planned or premeditated, but the way that Elon and Gwen led the company together and continue to, just like really interesting observation of finding strengths and then putting a lot of trust into a hard compliment.
Right.
And I think that still I don't fully understand, but I could see the benefits of that.
Is it? I know she's not a co-founder, but almost just as as close as it gets, right? She was there from the beginning.
She was there from the beginning, at least my understanding. Like I think like first major like BD hire. She had been doing like business development in aerospace prior, so Elon took a bet and everything just exploded.
So 6 years of company building later, do you think that's what good co-founder relationships look like? Very complementary skill sets?
I think complementary skill sets, but not in the traditional way that people sometimes talk about it. I think there's a lot in Silicon Valley and tech about this like technical and non-technical co-founder. I don't believe
there's more to it.
I don't think it's oil and vinegar. I don't think it's black and white. I don't think it's yin and yang. I think it's this like interesting dance where there's some overlap, but a huge amount of, again, trust on the other side.
Trust is the number one thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's different in different kind of capacities, right? Like seeing like, Gwen and Elon, and then like studying and reading about how Steve Jobs and Wozniak work together. These are very different, right? And you can't put your finger on it. I think we're so early, even in like civilization, understanding how great companies are built.
That is true.
So
that is true. There's no one way to build a company.
There's no one way to build a company. Absolutely.
You can have solo founders. You can have co-founders.
Absolutely.
You do need a team at the end of the day, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And, one thing as a first-time founder, I've grown a huge appreciation for is studying founders who have kind of gone through that journey. You could see it almost in every one of these big stories of founders who underappreciated the need to build a team around them, and then kind of got kicked in the ass and then had to learn how to do that and then became amazing at it.
Yeah.
I think like Steve Jobs is a really good example of this.
The second coming.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Like he had to get his ass kicked to kind of like build some humility, some perspective, etc. Come back and obviously do what they ended up doing post 99, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to close the loop on the SpaceX sort of learning story as well. If you could, highlight your time there and the learnings there, and that 2012, 13 to until the time you left.
Yeah. Yeah. In a nutshell, you'd asked what my role was. I didn't describe a department. Yeah. I was actually, and that was kind of intentional. I was in propulsion production and then avionics, and then I ended up in vehicle analysis and dynamics engineering. So for anyone that is listening and has been in aerospace or any of these engineering fields, that seems like a pretty crazy loop to go from like the production side all the way to like deep vehicle analysis.
What's an analogy you can give for that?
Yeah. Okay. So like in a very broad kind of analogy, let's say, it's like going from the HR team to the marketing team to the data science team.
Okay.
Right. In a matter of a few years, I think that, just for those.
Which team did you start with?
I was in production on propulsion.
Did you choose that, or was it the only opening?
That was actually the team that my friend Jason was on.
Okay.
And so we ended up just
natural selection.
It was basically exactly right. Yeah. So he said, "Come join my team."
Right.
Yeah. But in those years, like I was saying, what happened was we went from N of 1 to let's operationalize, and the common thread throughout all that was the entire organization buying into and coming into this idea of like, hey, we're not just a rocket company. Right. We are going to turn this entire industry upside down. And there's a huge amount of appreciation compared to traditional aerospace that SpaceX, in my view, invented for what this operational intensity meant to the actual business model entirely, right? So what that means is compared to traditional aerospace, you'll find design engineers on the factory floor regularly, daily, right? Whereas traditional aerospace would almost like intentionally separate that out.
Right.
And what that led to was just this like really robust, dynamic movement of information and knowledge from design to manufacturing and then operations, and eventually recovering a vehicle, landing it. Shout out actually, my first roommate when I moved out to LA is actually the owner of that design.
Oh, wow.
He's kind of like was one of the guys that conceived the idea and has overseen the entire operation of Mechazilla since then. Yeah. So pretty amazing to kind of
see
like
past colleagues pull that off. Yeah.
Past colleagues, roommates, right?
Roommates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it was, back then and even now, right? These kinds of companies are like,
who's this colleague?
It's a lifestyle. His name is Steve Harlow. I'll give him a shout out.
Okay.
Awesome guy. He's actually in the new Walter Isaacson biography that about Elon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so you learned to go between 3 very different functions.
Yeah.
What led to all those? What was the second, role, and then what led you to it?
Yeah, so that was in avionics. So interestingly enough, started out in production, got to SpaceX, got there at this time where we had this operational intensity. Immediately became a software engineer. Now. Interesting. I mentioned earlier, I studied mechanical engineering back at U of I. Even in college, I was going to the hackathon, some of the first hackathons that were happening. So interesting to kind of think about that heritage. But when I got to SpaceX, the problem became this like information and collaboration problem. How do you move this data quickly, efficiently, and logically
Right.
from design into manufacturing and then into flight reusability. And that just threaded into the space simulation lab, where we did all this component level testing for these space environments. So like really high thermal environments and low thermal environments, a lot of vibration, dynamics, shock testing. So making sure that every single component that we were designing was qualified and accepted to this rigorous standard. And this gets into kind of like software level principles of what we brought in at SpaceX. It's effectively, the analogy here is unit testing. So testing, small chunks of code very modularly is what has made the software industry as robust and reliable as it has been, as opposed to building it all and testing in one place. And if there's any problems, you go then reverse engineer where the problem is. Which is how it used to be done maybe 20, 25 years ago, right? You used to develop all the software and then like send it into like testing and then into release. And you did that like every year. Now, the way that
I think that's how the national labs would do it, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the entire industry, right? The entire software industry. Now, with like the advent of unit testing, you test these like small chunks and you're really isolating the problem and you're immediately fixing it. That analog brought to hardware is something that we did at SpaceX.
Right.
Kind of by the nature of like obviously Elon and his background coming from PayPal and bringing Silicon Valley thinking into aerospace. And so this is the thread of like how I ended up in the Space Simulation Lab.
Right.
Space Simulation Lab, that was part of the avionics department. So that's how I ended up in avionics.
So did you see that lab getting built in your time there?
So I saw that lab getting connected. I connected the lab.
Right.
How it used to be in the early days. We were always testing. Testing was always part of SpaceX's culture. It was a major part of the culture. Test early, test often, fail early, fail often, etc. At that time, we were blowing up an engine on the test stand like almost weekly. It's because we were just going through multiple configurations of how the entire assembly works.
Just fail differently every time.
Fail differently every time. Change the, say it at a high level, kind of change these parameters on critical components on the rocket by millimeters at a time and see how the entire system performs. Right. But even before that, in the Space Simulation Lab, you're testing each one of these components. But the way that it was done, it was very manual. Right. So this gets into the manufacturing bit. It was a lot of spreadsheets. It was a lot of phone calls, right, to make sure that you got the right parameters going into each test and things like that, which of course at the rate and the operational rigor that we were trying to achieve was going to be untenable for us to actually achieve the business model. So in those few years and, by being a part of that operation, I and my team, we built the system to actually digitally bring that information in, validate it, continuously analyze it, and automatically interact with the full production process. We were able to significantly improve the throughput of the parts that were tested. And as a function of improving the throughput of the parts that were tested, the number of tests, we were able to do more iterations on everything. And what more iterations means more innovation. Yeah. Right? You're able to invent new versions of the rocket regularly. Yeah. So you think about even the contrast in not being able to do that. You basically, in traditional aerospace, go through a huge design cycle. Right. And then once you get it right once, you lock it all down. Yeah. Because any change introduces risk. Yeah. And risk, is unacceptable. Yeah. But if you take the opposite mindset of that, you're constantly testing, you're constantly iterating. Now you're kind of building that risk analysis into the system. Right. And that's how you're able to, that's how we were able to, for example, introduce landing legs on the Falcon 9, even after the initial design. That's how we were able to add the grid fins for the landing control maneuvers and attitude control systems and everything iteratively. Right. So that's how you have the Falcon 9 today, which is actually a very different Falcon 9 than the one 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you think there's like a legacy brand component to it where, SpaceX is still, yes, it was like probably 12, 13 years into it, but still an upstart, nobody's, and everybody doesn't still know about it, they're not taken as seriously. Everybody still thinks they're going to fail, never going to work, right? Whereas on the other hand, you have Boeing, 100-year-old brand or whatever at that point, right? And they have to get it right the first time, and stakes are higher. It's just a function of scale, perhaps.
I think so. Yeah,
Right.
I think so. I think it's a function of scale. I think risk is very interesting. I also think organizations are organisms.
Yeah.
And these organisms are much more related to their founders than I think people give it credit for, especially large organizations.
Yeah.
I think we give a lot of credit for the relationship between a startup and its founder in kind of the startup world, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think we give it enough credit in large corporations. And I consider at this point SpaceX a large corporation and Boeing a large corporation. I think the big difference between them is that we know the founder of SpaceX, but
Boeing
the
doesn't
kind
know
of
their founder.
memory of the founders is kind of lost in some of these other large organizations.
Also, there's this documentary there are a bunch of them on YouTube. I watched one of them on, what happened to the 737s and like what was going on in that era. And I think they talk culture. I'm going to come back to culture. So I think in the 90s, they acquired another manufacturer. I can't remember
So
the name.
they did a merger with McDonnell Douglas.
McDonnell Douglas,
Yes.
They did a merger. And, there's this documentation on how absorbing that culture did not go well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Culture clash.
Yeah.
They also made a key decision in that merger to actually put at the head of the now newly formed company the business-minded CEO.
Yes.
And then it really became all about over time and only in a matter of like
profit
a decade.
margins and
it was the company value to it was actually the mission statement that they put on all the kind of shareholder notes, analyst calls of the purpose of the company was to increase shareholder value.
So the Boeing founding principles were sort of lost after that merger.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we saw it 15 years later.
Yeah, I think we saw it very publicly 15 years later.
Yeah, publicly we saw it 15 years later. Employees started probably seeing it internally very soon. Right?
I think especially with the realization of what is going on, especially for those in the aerospace world. You talk to people who have been there throughout that journey, and you'll see that everybody knew what was going on, where this was
within
headed.
the industry.
Yeah, exactly. It was very clear now in retrospect.
The writing was on the wall. What was it about? I mean, there are many things you mentioned about the SpaceX culture. It's like being iterative. You're not thinking about failure. You're thinking of every cycle as a learning opportunity, and design is not set in stone.
Right.
You are always improving. But how would you describe the culture? I know you said that it's very founder led, but what does that mean? How does that translate?
Yeah. So I talked about, I think some of these values and principles as to how they related to the operations or how we worked, but the culture, right, which is a lot more personal and interpersonal.
Yeah.
I would say it was intense. It was very fast paced, highly accountable, huge amount of agency, but also responsibility. The stakes are high. So what that leads to is, pretty direct interactions, very direct to the point where, most people, I think, would feel very uncomfortable in this kind of environment. I think one of the most amazing things is actually when I joined SpaceX, I think somebody told me this, the median age of this company that was building a rocket that was going to fly government satellites and eventually put humans on top to take to the International Space Station at that time, right?
Yeah.
The median age was like 26 or 28 or something. That was right in that range. It was in the 20s.
Right.
It's like crazy.
Yeah.
but because we got forged in that, that's where we were born, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
those are, yeah, that was when you were, your professional like work archetypes were basically in their infancy and forming, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing I think a lot about is like, I think, I think higher education, college, universities, like these are intense places, sometimes self-inflicted. We'll get back to that. I know there's a lot of controversy around the meaning of higher education, but look, you're pulling long hours, you're going hard at things. There's a lot of people
for no clear reason, but yeah, you are
totally. A lot of it is self-inflicted, right? I think that's right. And what are the outcomes? Absolutely. But nonetheless, you're putting in a lot, right? And basically going right from that into a place that you keep that going is, I thought was like one of the biggest gifts to me in my life. I look at, some of the other cases where my friends from college went on to corporations who I think effectively just like, muted their purpose and their existence, right? Told them more of like, don't worry about it. You don't have to do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's not your job. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Man, that is so unfortunate, I think, in society, right?
Yeah.
Whereas SpaceX was the opposite. Yeah. It's like, hey, you're nothing until you meet the bar of everybody else around you. Right. And people are doing things like developing the new version of the autonomous flight termination systems or the flight computer that was going to make this critical decision on the re-entry burn. It's awesome.
Care about, like, take ownership of everything that's going on in the company.
Yeah.
The culture. Okay.
And one role title at SpaceX that I think is now talked about a lot, it's the RE, the responsible engineer. I think that's a pretty important point is that role title effectively, as opposed to just design engineer. It's a person who is responsible all the way from design through the functioning of that component or subassembly on the rocket all the way through. Contrast that to, again, traditional aerospace. There's a design engineer, there's a quality engineer, there's an integration engineer, an operations engineer. Each person is throwing over the wall the responsibility for how this individual component would work. And of course, through that, you might imagine you lose a lot of that responsibility. Yeah. And care. And
is the responsible engineer the equivalent of a product manager in software?
I would say it's a good analog. I would say it's a good analog, right? It's like a product manager plus, right? Yeah. And increasingly so, I would say, in software now, especially with AI, I think you're actually getting more of that, like more responsibility.
Right.
Like and the lines are blurring between a product manager and a developer. Right. Responsibility for writing code is increasing on product managers, and the responsibility for understanding the domain application is increasing on software engineers. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Even before like this, I guess current AI wave in the 2022 economy reset, Airbnb got rid of their product managers. Not rid, but they changed their roles to add marketing. They became product marketing managers.
Okay.
Right? So you were taking on one function along with it. And I think Tesla added your product engineering managers now, or product engineers now, or something like that.
Product engineers. I love that title.
So that, you're like, yes, you're doing product, but you have to take on, one functional responsibility as well.
Right.
You're not going to be just a manager.
I think like technology has been like flirting with this idea for like a while. I think it was like sometime late 2000s that Google fired all their PMs, and then like a few years later brought them back or something.
The associate PM program, right, which became huge within Google.
Yeah.
Which is how you get a lot of people not working on anything. A lot of CEOs in one company.
I think that's how it's turned out. But I think
that wasn't the intention.
I think from my understanding, the program was very effective in their.
It was very effective.
Totally.
Karan, we're chatting offline about the importance of relationships and the ability to nurture them. I think like we did talk about not going against the current in a sale, right? Whether it's an investor, hire, or customer. But what's the art of relationship building and nurturing? What have you learned?
Ooh, what's the art? One I would say it is very important.
Yeah.
Before we get to the art of it, it is very important. It's important to invest. Social capital is like any other capital,
Yeah.
right? You have to invest, and then it compounds over time.
Yeah.
I think the art is, much more like nuanced, and different people have different styles. Some people are just able to be naturally good at it through a lot of charisma.
Yeah.
Others, it's like being helpful, just being helpful, genuinely helpful.
Yeah.
The bar isn't that high. I think what I've also learned recently, from going from a nothing company that may or may not exist. Like, first of all, huge appreciation for the humility required to potentially not matter.
Yeah.
Right? Not just as a person, but like your organization. And that's actually a pretty big switch to go through. But what I learned recently is like this, or what I've observed is this evolution from people potentially like not caring or you not mattering to now people coming to us for expertise and advice and like a benchmark across the portfolio of customers that we work with and what we're seeing in the market. You could add a lot of value. We have just by information sharing, like broad perspectives. I'll give you an example. We see a lot of hardware companies scaling. We've been through it. So one, we could just add perspective of like what are the do's and don'ts of scaling a hardware manufacturing business, but also give the benchmark of how people are doing it today and where have people stumbled.
Yeah.
Like these big implementations for big ERP systems.
Yeah.
We've seen like a lot of, kind of bumps and bruises, people falling on their face in terms of some of these. And so we're able to
genuinely add value to most of your customers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just by giving the perspective of what we're seeing in aggregate.
Right.
So just being helpful, genuinely helpful, going out of your way. It's important, and then just touch points. And then
the value add comes first, and the transaction comes as just a natural result. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't matter in the short term.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I fully agree with that. I think it's the transaction is really just like a function of how much you invested into everything that came before it.
What are some tactics that you can share?
I think some of these are really basic, right? Like, especially for like technical people, the value of, the golf course or Top Golf or, just taking a customer out to dinner, or taking them out to the Lakers game, like
chess, poker,
whatever it is, right?
Whatever it is,
everything. Is much more valuable than people think, and that has stayed, I think, constant and true, even as the world has become more connected.
Right.
Things can be done more digitally and remotely.
Yeah.
The value of investing in the person and being with the person as opposed to a transaction. I think the digital side is actually, by definition, transactional. So I think that's like one tactic is just hang out, have fun, be yourself, right? And be present.
Yeah.
Be present, right? Yeah. What other tactics? I was talking about this earlier. For us, being a kind of industry benchmark expert is a tactic that we're starting to lean into more now, right? So, this is what First Resonance sees in aerospace hyperscaling. It's like very valuable. It's like a nuanced playbook, but to just like realize it, know it, and then actually productize that is something that we're leaning into more now. So that's a tactic that we're excited about.
What are some tactics you've learned about nurturing long-term relationships that you probably didn't know before? When a sale goes south, how do you recover?
I think a sale going south, you just go back to the basics, right? So if a sale is not working out, just go back to the basics and be present, invest, take them out to a Lakers game, right? Now, a customer relationship, so an existing customer, where maybe expectations were mismatched, or or something like that, or they're growing so fast that we're just like, there's an impedance mismatch,
Right.
which is really interesting in our world. A company that may have just been like, let's say 6 people in a warehouse, all of a sudden is like hundreds of people with hundreds of thousands of square feet of factory space, and they're like rapidly hiring. There can be a kind of impedance mismatch where we're just slightly slower to react to that scale, than get ahead of it. So for that, there's a lot more work that you have to do.
You have to get ahead of it.
You have to get ahead of it, and also you have to invest in who they're going to be.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get into stuff like, oh, why would we spend a whole day flying up there and walking their factory line? They're only like 200 people. I'm like, okay, but let's just look at the breadcrumbs, right? They just raised $400 million to do X. There's this big market demand in, for example, energy or maritime security.
You almost have to put on the investor hat.
You have to put on the investor hat, exactly. So you have to look out even ahead of the customer and where they're looking and impedance match that. And that requires like a whole different art, right? And that art includes, again, a lot more investment into preparing, creating that vision for them and for our company and how we're going to serve this customer and which customers really matter to invest in. Okay,
so like let's like tie that back to your 50 people company now, right? What are some things about org design you've learned that you brought into the company, things about hiring, building culture that you brought into your own company?
I think a lot of what I've brought in is just a reflection and function of how I was forged. So, I've been not very shy of bringing in the culture of very high-paced execution, interaction, and directness, right? It's been interesting because I think bringing that in and not necessarily working with people who have come from that in every function has been hard for those people. It's also been hard for me because I took that for granted, just like how strong that kind of core was. Also, I think, not a lot has been written about my personal forging and experience. Contrast that to Amazon, for example, where Bezos actually wrote down a lot. I mean, all of it, in terms of working principles from the early days, and they were very public about it. So I think that's cool because what that's allowed for, and actually just stepping back one moment, between SpaceX and starting First Resonance, I was at a company as a machine learning engineer, and actually the CEO of that company was a PM at Amazon prior.
Okay.
So then in like a hyper kind of in a hypercharged way, I basically got all the Amazon principles, and then I started studying them. So I brought a lot of that into First Resonance as well. Some of these principles around like working backwards, which is like work backwards from the end outcome that you're working on. And the document that drives that is the PRFAQ. So a really heavy written culture of writing down,
What's the PRFAQ?
A PRFAQ, press release and FAQ.
Okay.
It's basically
if there's a public fuck up, how are you going to respond?
That's part of the FAQ.
Right.
At least that's like an example of it. But really the idea here is like, look, there are a lot of smart people in the world. I mean, this is my version of it. Okay. There's a lot of smart people in the world. There are a lot of ideas. And oftentimes people take these ideas and they make these beautiful presentations, slideshows effectively about the merits of it. Everyone nods their head and people get off to doing work. Who knows if that's successful or not? Oftentimes things are not successful. And all you have to look back to is this slideshow presentation about the merits of this idea, as opposed to a really well thought out press release that is actually written in the form of what you want to even announce to the public. Because at the end of the day, you're not just presenting a slideshow to the public, you're actually creating a press release. So why not work backwards from the thing that you're going to be sharing with the world anyways, and then comment on that, work against the doc, and then have the FAQ where people ask these questions of like, what if we screw up, or how do we handle this case, things like that. And you build that over time together, and work backwards from what you're actually trying to get out there into the world.
Can you share an example?
Yeah, I mean, we've always, I mean, I kind of take it for granted now at First Resonance. People are very uncomfortable coming in. Actually, like, I see this all the time. Somebody new, this happens sometimes. Somebody new will come in. We give them a big objective, right?
Yeah.
Like, swing for. I mean, we're a startup. We're hiring people who are gonna not just come in under the wing of somebody and grow. Like, we're giving them big things to knock out of the park. And sometimes people will come in with this like presentation of what we're gonna do.
Right.
And they're going through, like, basically on like slide 3, I'm like, okay, great. So what are we gonna get out of this? They're like, oh yeah, that's coming up. I was like, no, I want to know the answer.
Yeah.
Right. And people are like, what? This isn't how I've done things.
Yeah.
But look, we live in like high intensity times, fast paced times. I'm not looking for a movie.
Yeah.
If I wanted to know, if I wanted to sit through an hour and a half of this like narrative arc and character building and climax and resolution, I would just go watch a movie, but at work,
just get to it.
I get to it. I'm looking for results.
Yeah.
I'm looking for outcomes. And what we're doing, this like dance, this performative thing of like going through a deck over the course of 30 minutes, we could have actually all read through a lot more thoughtfully in maybe 5-10 minutes, put in questions, and use those 20 minutes to actually come out with a better outcome than any one of us would have been able to do, right? And a better understanding of why we're doing certain things, why we're not doing certain things.
Is this like for new hires that just first come in, or like is this like part of a working interview?
Yeah. So it's so I guess I was describing this discomfort of this like kind of written culture and workflow as opposed to a performative one. So it is like for new hires, I think they sometimes get caught up there. But a year ago we realized this, and we decided that actually every single new hire has to write a 1-pager on why they want to join First Resonance and why First Resonance wants them to join.
Nice.
And it people have been like, oh, can they just like put a few bullets down? No, but you interviewed them.
Yeah.
Of course, no. I still need the 1-page. It's 1 page.
They're forced to think.
They're forced to think.
Yeah.
They're forced to think and articulate.
Yeah.
And be concise.
Yeah.
And that's everything that you want to have in somebody working in a high intensity, high pressure environment, right?
Yeah.
High agency environment.
Yeah.
That's what it means for people at First Resonance. I think you asked for an example. So we're in the midst of launching our AI product. We just announced, and we're getting some really cool outcomes. I'm going to save that for later because we're actually going to be talking about it more in the fall. But it's our AI product. And of course, there's so many things happening in AI. There's like way too many things. It's hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us to be working backwards from what the customer outcome needs to be.
Right.
And be really rigorous about that. Because we need highly skilled engineers who are keeping up with this huge pace of change happening in the world of AI. But we're not open AI. We're not like this infrastructure layer. Yeah. We are serving manufacturers. We are a manufacturing platform. Yeah. And an AI product has to be sitting right next to that. Yeah. And we have to be very rigorous.
It has to be incredibly reliable.
The implications of what AI means in manufacturing, absolutely. Yeah. Has to be it has to be reliable, dependable. But at the same time, I think in these high intensity environments, people overcomplicate that. Right. Like we don't need 99% accuracy in every application, but we need to understand every application. Right. We need to understand where we need 99% accuracy, and we need to understand where 75% is acceptable, but also
and also like 3 times
accelerate.
better than whatever's out there.
Exactly.
That
right.
that's more so,
Exactly
right?
right.
Like because you're
Exactly.
you're obsessed with the craft, but then you also have to push out a useful product, right? So there, what's the balance that has to be struck? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And we need to be able to speak in plain
Yeah.
English to our customers,
Yeah.
right? So that leads to a lot of rigor that you need to develop and even simplifying the language. And this
Yeah.
is where a PR FAQ
Right.
comes into use versus just a performative act of this is
Right.
what we're going to do.
I like that. You mentioned that this is, in a high agency environment, right? How do you evaluate agency in people when hiring them?
It is so difficult. It is so difficult.
It is. In an interview, it is incredibly difficult.
You know, I'm of the opinion that interviewing people is extremely difficult.
Yeah. I believe so.
Yeah.
I do I do like 2-week working projects. There's no other way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think that's like a great way to do it. So, with our technical hires, we do coding challenges. Yeah. We're increasingly doing that in other functions as well. We do case studies,
right.
Even in our sales team. So we're actually, the interview can, take care of the actual like the skill sets in sales.
Right.
But the skill sets needed to be effective in sales at First Resonance actually include a lot of like research on our ICP and a given company.
Yeah.
So we actually give that out as a case study. So I think those are important. These like activities of 2-week kind of projects, case studies, coding challenges. Increasingly now, even on the technical side, we do entire projects as opposed to coding.
Even then, you won't find out for the first 3 months.
And that's why we index very much on references at First Resonance. I think more than most companies do. I think so. To me, I'm like, yeah. Interview, did they check the boxes? Great.
Right.
Then we take very seriously,
right.
Hey, we need introductions to 3 people. Somebody who you've worked with as a peer, somebody who's worked for you, and somebody you've worked for.
What if there's none of that and it's a very early hire?
Well, usually it's at least 2 of those, right? So it might be that they've never managed somebody before,
right.
but they've probably been managed.
Okay.
Now, look, if they're coming straight out of college, et cetera, we actually don't hire too many of those, in fact. So that might be a different conversation.
So that'll be once you get there, we'll come back to this.
I think it's been very rare that we've done that.
Right.
And that we fall back on like more of the traditional kind of stuff of just like, hey, is this person intense?
Yeah.
And are they hungry?
Yeah.
Right. But typically,
and then you just reevaluate in 3 or 6 months, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Give them a longer leash and see like.
Exactly.
Goes,
yeah, exactly. But for people that are coming from industry, we're talking to people that they've managed, that they've been a peer to, and that have managed them. And I always ask this one question, which is not, typically people are looking for in these reference calls like, hey, anything I should know, any yellow flags, right? It's like, reference calls aren't to look for.
That's also an art. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not just looking for whether this person.
You're looking for what doesn't get answered.
What's that?
You're looking for what doesn't get answered.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to ask very specific questions, right? Yeah. One question I always like to ask is, hey, having worked with this person, what advice would you give me to make this person successful in this role? And usually also by that time, I've actually given them the JD, not just the role title. We're hiring this, this AI application engineer.
Right.
I'll usually say they're going to be responsible for writing product specs on AI applications. They're going to be responsible for developing and deploying AI applications. So, I'll actually go through the JD, then I'll ask that question. Hey, what advice would you give me to make them the most successful in this role? And it's a really thoughtful question that I always appreciate when they're like, oh, okay, they take their time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I see. Like, you're asking me for my advice, not just like an opinion on how it was like to work with this person. Yeah.
What does that reveal usually?
It usually answers questions that would have otherwise come on the surface. People will answer things like, hey, you know what? Like, give them clear, like as an example, they'll say things like, oh, okay, give them clear direction.
So then their guard is down and they're They're trying to be helpful.
They're trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
And it reveals, because nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
What it reveals is what are the imperfections that this person has learned from working for the person that we're looking to hire,
Right.
that in retrospect they would have liked to have known themselves.
Right.
So it's usually things like, as an example, sometimes it's like, hey, give them a lot of clarity on what you're trying to get out of them, and then they'll be very successful. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You didn't mention that earlier. You didn't mention that, like, you know, this person could wander or like go outside of the scope. And then, you know, the opposite example is like, hey, give them a really long leash, let them free to do what they want, but hold them accountable to the outcomes and things like that. So you get a lot of nuance of like these, again, imperfections, because nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
And I always take those notes very seriously.
Yeah.
I write down all my references. I actually pin them to my one-on-one documents.
Right.
So actually years into working with somebody, I'll actually look back on the reference call that I had in hiring the person, because these imperfections, they actually stay constant, I've found. People don't change that much.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Is that the difference between the best performing people versus, you know, the rest? That the best performers are way more dynamic. They do change.
You know,
or are they just way better quadrupling down on their strengths?
I think it's more of the latter. I think well, let me say this. I think the best people are like voracious learners. They're constantly learning. Yeah. But when I say change, I'm talking about like foundational.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah.
And I'm of the opinion that the best people actually hold constant their foundational behaviors, because I think it's really hard to change those. And I think we're talking about things like is this person somebody who's going to take an objective and run really hard themselves and ask others to follow and keep up? Yeah. Or are they going to bring everybody along for the ride? Right. It actually turns out, I would say, that one's not more right than the other.
Yeah, you need both kind of people in one organization. Yeah.
And the best people, I think you were alluding to this, the best people realize this in themselves. They have a high degree of self-awareness, and then they double, triple down on their strengths. Right. And over time, I think this is one of the biggest things is like, and I'm learning this, is they learn how to realize these imperfections and strengths in compliments. Right. In their compliments and actually lead to a better outcome for the organization. And I think that's really difficult. Yeah. Because for like a high agency, high intensity, high kind of pace kind of person who runs through walls, I would describe myself as this. It's a high degree of skill that's required to work with somebody who is a lot more thoughtful, brings everybody along for the ride, and isn't necessarily just running through that wall. Yep. Right. Yeah. You it's see, a skill.
I think a high agency person would just see a problem and run for the solution, and there's little thought about I just said like getting everyone in for the ride. It's just about solving that problem in that given moment, whatever it takes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
How do you define agency or high agency? It's like, I think like been in conversation a lot the last year and a half or so.
I think a high agency is taking something and running with it. I mean, I think that's obvious. I think like impact is also important, right? So you could have high agency but not actually drive a lot of impact, right? Yeah. So I think a lot about like outcomes and impact. Obviously, like high agency applied well leads to a great impact, ideally for the organization and the world.
Yourself, the organization, it just trickles down.
Society at large, right? So I think. And look, I think I'm so I've been so immersed in it for so long. Like I've only been in really like high agency environments that I'm probably not the best person to ask.
Right.
I think it's like one of those things where it's like, you know it when you see it.
Right.
Right. So, yeah.
Do you think entrepreneurialism is actually contrary to agency or high agency? Because you almost have to learn to delegate and not, go out problem solving yourself. And these are usually very high ownership people.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
so individual contributors, you want them to be high agency. Managers, that's probably problematic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, there's.
And there are great entrepreneurs who are probably not high agency.
100%.
Right.
And I think that word entrepreneur, I think about this a lot. And I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few years. There's this concept of founder to CEO. And there's a few things like written here and there about it.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'll put this analogy out there, okay?
Yeah.
It's the same people that we expect to jump off the boat and start swimming and then like kind of build a small raft and kind of start rowing against these huge waves and then to turn that raft into a boat where you could have more people on and then a ship and then put sails up. That's really kind of interesting if you think about that, right?
Yeah.
We're asking for pirates to become captains.
Yes.
I think
I like that analogy.
It's an incredibly hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of survivor bias in the narrative of what an entrepreneur is, right?
Yeah.
And
these are two different concepts, just to be clear.
Exactly.
Two very different concepts. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, exactly. It's a different concept, and it's so different. The people who are able to cross that chasm for themselves as individuals.
I'm sure it's a transition.
It's a it might be a transition.
Yeah.
It might be like a huge step function. It might be actually what we were
It's
talking
probably
about
a step
earlier.
function.
It's a step function, but it's also, I think it's I'll go back to, I think it's falling on your face. I think it's getting your ass kicked by yourself, by others around you, and then going through that kind of like metamorphosis, right? And not everyone's able to do it well.
No. I think probably CEOs are able to endure all of that, and the different company stages. I have like such mad respect for them, and early stages, have their own challenges. Yeah. But it's still fun.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then it starts looking very different as the company grows.
Yeah. But I think if you look at even companies like great companies that have scaled, going back to the importance of the founder leader, they're able to actually rebuild the startup within the company every few years. So you think about the iPhone. Yeah,
there's some sort of Bell Lab sort of a initiative within the company that keeps them alive and kicking.
Exactly. And therefore keeps the organization vivacious, I would say, right? The iPhone at Apple, as an example.
Completely separate team.
At SpaceX.
Smaller team, separate, you just...
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like carve...
You're like a startup,
Elon used to do this all the time. It was like kind of like crazy. Like to the he just pull random or seemingly random high agency, high intensity engineers off of major things to go after like
the hardest problem,
like a large, very focused thing, and sometimes like with really like important lasting outcomes, and sometimes they were like nothing projects, which is kind of interesting as well.
I'm sure like that's you try 20 different experiments and one works out. It's a very scientific process.
Absolutely.
That goes into it.
Absolutely. And huge appreciation for that. You have to have that. Right. And not everything's going to be successful and lasting. And that's the point. Right. So
I think that's right. From these experiences, I think like pre-chat I was talking about, I think, choosing what to work on is like really one of the only critical decisions that you'll make in your life. Right. If you take average age in America, it's 80 years, what people live up to, right? So, which means you get out of college at 22 and for 50 years of your life, you're at work. And then if you're working 70 hours a week, that is 70% of your life.
Yeah.
right? Which is not the lens with which most people think about it,
Right.
you know, and end up being miserable.
Yeah.
So most most choices you make, you know, are going to lead you in a certain direction in life. And um, what do you think has compounded for you, and when did you realize that you had to be intentional about choices that you were making?
You know, I think one of the things I appreciate this, I think, you know, Steve Jobs actually talked about this at this one commencement speech that he did that's pretty famous. I forgot which one it was, but he talked about the dots connect when you look back. And I think that's really important. I think like as we kind of, you know, I'm very early in that 70% in many ways of like what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. The dots connect when I look back. So this this instance where I met Jason on this random trip to Silicon Valley in December 2011, 12, something like that, that led me to the SpaceX internship that ended up, you know,
what led to that trip?
What led to that trip?
Yeah.
You know, I think...
what else was on the table? I like to think of it as like, what are the options at any given time, and like, how do you choose between an option?
I think sometimes you just also don't know. I think it was like not options. I think it was like happenstance. For me at that time, I think it was just like between curiosity and non-curiosity, or like laziness, just like hanging out, resting and relaxing over that winter break, right? Like between those 2 semesters, like I could have just like lounged out, went back to my hometown and reconnected with friends, right? But instead I decided to like go exercise my curiosity. So, you know, but like that wasn't like an active choice, right? It just kind of happened, right? I think like going way back, one thing I only realized even after starting first residence, right? Like,
hey, you could have also taken a 4-hour bus ride from Chicago to, you know, here in Detroit.
Yeah.
You were pursuing mechanical engineering. How did it end up being Silicon Valley, right? So there was something going on. Like,
I studied mechanical engineering because I actually wanted to go into the automotive industry. So you make a really good point.
Yeah,
that's right. So a lot of these dots, like it's very crazy. And I studied mechanical engineering, one, because I wanted to go into automotive, but also I didn't want to sit in front of a computer. It turns out that we all sit in front of a lot of computers now, but then when I got to college, I actually found myself back in front of a computer because back in middle school, I was coding a lot. And actually, interesting note, back then, before smartphones and things like that, there were all these forums for like hacking cell phones. And I was I was actually pretty prolific. I was like
the iPhone jailbreak.
Yeah, like pre iPhone.
Yeah. Oh, pre iPhone. Okay.
Pre iPhone. We're talking about like the feature phones and things like that.
Right. Okay.
So it was like small, like kind of inconsequential things, like changing the start image on a phone, the outside screen image and stuff like that. I was pretty prolific on some of these forums, like getting like pinned and stickied and stuff like that. I had like the pseudonym, this like internet era, right?
Interesting.
But actually, you know, so then I found.
How did you get into that?
Computer. So I got into that. Yeah, we were getting there. So because my dad, throughout my entire childhood, worked at Motorola, and I saw the entire thread of the invention of the cell phone, actually through the 90s.
Yeah,
like
Motorola was one of the first ones. Yeah. I remember.
Was the first one.
Yeah. My dad bought this like chunky ass, you know, big phone.
Yeah.
Like, which was like a cordless phone we used to have.
Right.
That the size of your, I think, like hand.
Huge. Yeah, like the Alpha Tech, then the Star Tech, and then there was the Razor in like the early 2000s, if you remember that.
Yeah. So then the Razor was the flip phone, right?
Yeah, it was a flip phone, but the really thin one, right?
Yeah.
That was like, at that time, that was like the thing.
It was the thing. It was so trending. Yeah.
It was so cool. But I grew up with that, and I actually only had this realization a few years ago. So after already starting first residence, is that manufacturing has always been a part of my life. Because my dad started out as a production technician at Motorola, building cell phones. This is pre-globalization.
Full circle. You started in production.
Yeah.
Many years later in
exactly.
SpaceX,
So my dad was a production technician on the first manufacturing lines for the first cell phones back in the 90s. And I watched actually, and then, you know, my dad evolved his career at Motorola, and I watched from building cell phones in, the suburbs of Chicago, Arlington Heights and Libertyville, Illinois is actually, where Motorola's headquarters was and still is. I watched as he, was building these things to then was made responsible for bringing up these factories in first like Singapore and then Germany, and then eventually everything converged in China.
Yeah.
So my dad would go on these he'd be gone for like weeks at a time to China to bring up these manufacturing lines. And that was very much part of like my entire childhood. Like I watched that. Right. And so, all these dots somehow connect.
Right.
Globalization is a big part of this, right? Because interesting note, globalization kind of took my dad away from me for like large swaths of my childhood, right? So it was just like me, my sister, and my mom hanging out as my dad was bringing up a manufacturing line in China.
Did your dad ever talk about that time in China or about manufacturing at all at home? Did he talk about work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were surrounded by it, right? Because in the late evenings and nights, my dad would be on these like conference calls with all these people overseas.
So you're absorbing all of that growing up.
I was immersed in it, but I wasn't really aware of obviously what now we like talk about the macro impacts of like what is globalization, what's its impact, etc. But it's interesting watching that globalization happen to go into a company like SpaceX, which is in aerospace and defense, working with the government, where it's domestic manufacturing is the only option.
Right.
So those are like polar experiences. So I kind of also developed a perspective on like what is the right way of manufacturing. And also what was the inevitability of what we're now talking about in 2025, which is, reindustrialization, reshoring, friendshoring, nearshoring. It was inevitable. And economically, it's what we're going to now see for the next like 10, 20 year life, like the next 10, 20 year cycle of how we interact with the world around us.
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty bipartisan.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's more of like a societal and civilization kind of question, right? Of like, how do you produce goods to, support the civilization that we live in.
This is like a really fun story. So I didn't realize your dad was in manufacturing. What was an early transformational experience you had, whether in childhood, teenage, later on, that you think gave you the permission to just go do things when you realize that, you don't need anyone's permission?
Yeah. If I point back to like childhood, the idea of like you could just do things really came out of, I think I can talk about this now a little bit more. My dad used to bring home these like prototype cell phones, and I'd have early access to them. So I'd start hacking them before the rest of the people had them.
Oh.
And so I had this I got off the block.
So that's early. How you got into hacking.
That's how I got into hacking.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting in retrospect. It's like, man, like, why do people care about this so much? But like the carriers really cared about this stuff because they were so egotistical about like the branding on the phones and everything. But I was just like, I was like 13, 14. I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go do this. This is so cool. Like I'm so cool. I get to put my monogram on this cell phone instead of.
What is the enticing part? Is it because you couldn't change it and you were like, this should be configurable? Like, why can't I just have whatever I want on the screen?
I think for me, the enticing part was you had to jump through hoops to kind of to make these things happen.
Yeah, it was.
So you had to like get this bootleg firmware like interface. So then you had to go through like you had to download it off of like LimeWire and Morpheus and stuff like that, which was already like
it was going against the rules.
Yeah, exactly. It was going against the rules.
It was going against the rules.
It was going against the rules, jumping through hoops, and then doing something that was just like, honestly, at that time it was just cool.
Yeah.
Right. It was just cool. So that was like the early part of it, and then I think the later part of it was really, of course, the SpaceX experience was like, not just you can just do things. It's like you have to do things.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, who else is going to do it?
Yeah.
And that was like regularly my interaction, like not just in what we were doing at SpaceX, but what I was doing at SpaceX. I was constantly butting up against senior leadership actually at SpaceX.
Right.
And that realization was a pretty big one. It's like, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then also like, well, this is how great things happen.
Yeah.
Is like this like healthy friction inside of these amazing organizations. I think it's
and
an
there are
important
times
point.
I guess the more times you keep getting proven right
Yeah.
against like more experienced people in any organization, the more confidence you build up.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
This really great piece on Founders Fund came out. I don't know if you saw it in the Generalist. And so Mario, who's the author, talks about the Founders Fund culture or philosophy, which is where Peter, gives a voice to everyone on the table, irrespective of their experience.
Yeah.
And that culture is not for everyone.
Right.
Like where if a senior partner comes in from, let's say a different firm, and you're on a table where, Peter's like asking the junior analyst, what are your thoughts? And that's like core part of decision making.
Yeah.
Right. That's not for everyone.
Ooh,
that's sort of culture.
Yeah. But I imagine like,
but imagine what that would do for that analyst, right? Like,
what it would do for that. Totally. Totally. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not even just an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's like a responsibility.
Yeah.
So
it's a way to train people up.
It's a way to train people up, but also at a certain point, like they're not just asking for your opinion and it's an opportunity to present your opinion. It's a responsibility. Like come in.
Yeah.
Being thoughtful. Yeah. Because you're gonna be heard every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's when you start taking it seriously.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think it's really important. And again, going back to this analogy of organizations are organisms.
Yeah.
Thinking about an organism, you need to generate new cells and shed old cells.
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, regularly.
Exactly.
Regularly.
And I think a lot of like organizational design, organizational psychology does not incorporate the importance of this.
What are some mentors you've had over time in your life, your career? How did you find them, and what's the impact they've had on your life?
Yeah, I would say for mentorship, this is an area I actually admittedly want to get a lot better at.
Oh,
I'm not very good at it.
Okay.
I think.
In what sense?
I think there are people that I hear about, like having like a mentor that's persistent, like across a longer arc. What I think I have experienced and what I benefited from is having mentors at like key
at different stages
times. Different stages.
I can relate.
Yeah. So I could definitely appreciate that. Like I'll give you an example. At SpaceX, when I ended up on the Dynamics team, Kevin Wu was my manager, and I think the way that he thought and the way that he kind of allowed me to unleash everything that I was trying to get done. Actually, I was trying to get done way more than I was able to until K-Wu came along and like gave me that ability to unleash. Then after,
did he help you prioritize better? What was
it was less tactical. Honestly, he was just like, "Hey, I hear you. Yeah, we should. I want that too. We can do that." We used to, him and we used to have these conversations about the SpaceX hive mind. It was this idea of being able to move information into and out of a system, where everybody can understand what everybody else's decisions are and all the technical information underneath that. So we were kind of like theorizing and already talking about like what now we're talking about, like AI systems with memory. Right.
Which became your second iteration, of setting up that flow of information between the company, between all teams.
100%. Yeah. So like the deep technical part of dynamics engineering, which was already like super like, intellectually stimulating and everything like that, had that thread of, well, how does that interact with every other decision being made? So he wasn't really like giving me like some of those tactical manager, like help prioritize and stuff like that. He was actually just giving me, first of all, like, he was like reciprocating the energy, not suppressing it. And then two, he was giving me kind of psychological tactics of how I can increase my leverage and influence on the rest of the organization. Because at that time I was pretty young as an engineer. I was like really just rambunctious, and I was trying to steamroll people into getting things done.
I see.
And it's SpaceX, so I was like, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to
Be
be doing.
direct steamroll people.
Yeah. I was just trying to, like, my tactic of getting things done, my like persuasion tactic was just steamrolling.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I had in my tool belt. And he taught me that there are much more kind of tactful ways of going about this.
Right.
So that was one mentor. After leaving SpaceX.
Whoa, what are some of the tactful ways you remember? Let's stick out.
Well, I think like one thing he convinced
The art of soft influence.
Soft influence, right? Yeah, exactly. And one of those soft influences was like, hey, come in very prepared, but ask for the meeting with the CIO. Like just go pull him into a room and the VP of software, but come in prepared with everything that you need them to consider.
Right.
And now I didn't actually reflect on this until just now. We were talking about this earlier, like have this, effectively what we were talking about with the PR FAQ. We didn't call it that then, but like effectively it was like, hey, don't just try to like nudge them into making some of these decisions on the platform. Effectively, one of the big decisions was transforming the system that we use to build the rocket, the digital system, into a platform first approach, where everybody can plug in their pieces as opposed to a very heavy monolith.
Right.
So it was like, how do you use soft influence on senior leadership?
Right.
And that had to do with like, one, just ask for the time, two, come in very prepared, and make your case.
I think that sort of, you can probably, maybe close the loop around on what role that played in investor relationship management.
Oh yeah.
And I guess customer relationship management. I guess later on as you started your own company.
Yeah.
Right. Because in some ways it's very similar. You have stakeholders, where you have to go back and make a case, whether that's for a budget, for a structural change, for product change, or where that end up might.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think, environments like SpaceX, one thing I've always thought is like SpaceX has a lot of intrapreneurs.
Yeah.
So, entrepreneurs who are inside of a company. And the interactions are very modular, right? It's not this like big tops down kind of motion. You're constantly negotiating with the teams around you, the people around you, and you're selling yourself, and you're selling your piece of whatever to the next downstream team. So I've been dealing with like customers in this regard of like a better manufacturing system for well over a decade.
Yeah, that's where I'm like now connecting the dots. I'm like, oh yeah, that there's some like really deep roots here.
Yeah, and hey, interesting note. A lot of my customers today, a lot of our customers at First Resonance were my customers at SpaceX, because those SpaceXers have
started their own companies.
Have gone on to found companies like like Varda is a good example.
Reliable Robotics.
Reliable.
Radiant Nuclear.
Radiant is a customer.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's a lot of, it's like, hey, we're just doing this again.
Yeah.
It's actually awesome. Yeah. We're doing it again, but we're doing it for in-space pharmaceutical manufacturing. We're doing it again, but for micronuclear reactors, et cetera. So it's a lot of fun for me.
What like got you lean towards software? Was it the hacking days and of those Motorola phones? What was it?
Yeah, I think the threat of it, that's what got me started. The hacking days, the hackathons in college. One fun side story here is I did an internship in 2012 at Samsung in Korea. So I was in Suwon, South Korea for 4 months.
What did you learn at Samsung?
A lot. I learned that I did not want to work at a large multinational corporation.
So that's where the lesson came from.
Yeah. For sure. That was like the coldest water way of like learning. Absolutely not.
Were you just getting coffee? What was the?
I was actually, good call. A lot of coffee, a lot of coffee runs. My job there, just to share, my job for the summer was to improve the water intake efficiency of this dishwasher from 95% to 98%. The way we were doing that was optimizing the impeller design and running a whole bunch of CFD simulations, computational fluid dynamics simulations. And at that time, we didn't have like remote high powered computing. We were running it on like desktops under our desk. So these runs would take like 2 to 4 hours. So in that time, what do? Like your computer's down. So I would go on these coffee runs.
For an organization the size of Samsung, right, that's probably a meaningful change in product. But for someone who's just starting out, you know, it's just
I think you might be
probably
right.
not interesting enough.
I always wonder. I actually don't know. I don't know how meaningful it is.
For customers?
Yeah, I don't know.
But when Apple comes out and tells you have 7% more battery, or like when Tesla comes out and tells you have 10% more battery time, right? It does end up mattering a lot.
I agree. I agree. So you're probably right.
It takes way more to, you know, like just implement that change and across the
you're
company,
right? I think like
across the product line.
For sure. And that comes back to impact, right? I think like efficiency versus like end outcome are also different. So it's like nuanced.
Function of scale.
But you know, I was so you know, between these like 2 to 4 hour long CFD runs, I was like twiddling my thumbs, and when I got bored of even going for these coffee breaks, I just I went heads down and started learning Python. So I just spent that summer learning actually how to read and write Korean. I was that bored. And Python.
So we owe Karan, the software engineer, to Samsung?
Something like that, maybe. Or so many, again, multiple dots, right? We owe it to my dad bringing home these prototype phones and me wanting to hack. We owe it to Samsung for being bored. We owe it to SpaceX. And this gets to the why software.
Always proximity to manufacturing. You know, background in mechanical engineering. Yet, you know, there's this like other arc of, you know, going deeper in software.
That's right.
Yeah, this parallel almost.
And you know, I think especially right now for the last like few years, there's, you know, some people who have been making the case that software is commoditized and it's irrelevant. All the work is done. I think that's far from the truth. And that, you know, like everything's in like hard tech, even though like AI is also useful. So I'm like, okay, how do you reconcile that? But I think to answer your question, why software?
Software development is commoditized.
Yeah.
Application is still a different story.
I agree. And so there's so much work to be done, right? And how software interacts with what's actually physically changing, like the chips are changing.
Development and deployment is still like going to continue being like, you know, the moat, I guess.
Distribution,
development,
owning the customer, the brand trust really matters.
Brand trust,
right?
Different things matter more now.
Like, people could probably vibe code the iOS lock screen.
Even in development, you need taste.
I agree. You need taste, but you also need distribution and all that kind of stuff. So like I was saying, I think people could probably vibe code the iOS lock screen and home screen today very easily. But there is a difference in what Apple actually produces, and everyone's trust in that way of doing it. But also, one thing I would say about software is our brains are electrical systems, right? They're neuroelectrical. And I think there is something there about what software is and what it will be, and our human brains and the electrical systems that they are, where software is able to allow us to interact much more naturally rather than hardware, which is ironic. But like all systems are becoming more cyber physical, right? It's not just gears that are turning. I mean, software is inevitable, and there's a lot more work to be done. And the way that organizations communicate and move information about is through software. And so that I think that's why software is my deep interest is how do we help people communicate better, iterate faster, innovate more, solve the biggest problems. Whatever vehicle allows for that, that's where I want to be. And the vehicle that I've found is the systems that help organizations move this complex information.
What would, especially hardware organizations, right? Is it, oh, I'm going to butcher the analogy. Is it Jira plus Slack plus something else, but like for hardware companies?
Like, are you asking what the eventuality is, or are you asking like what we do, or what?
Yeah,
what we see?
yeah. Like if you.
Yeah. I think like
internal collaboration.
Yeah.
Between, just to do a deep dive, since we were on the product, I was like,
I think elements of it. I will say, like as Slack, for better or for worse, I have some opinions on Slack that might not be the same as what most people think.
No, please do share.
I think that Slack is an inducer of ADHD for organizations.
I think a lot of people might agree with you.
Yeah, it's just a constant ping. It's basically social media for the enterprise.
Yes, it's not useful.
So good. I'm glad I'm not the only one that thinks that. So it can be useful. I think it's an under-realized opportunity to being some sort of like mission control or like cockpit for organizations, but it's actually just like a random flurry of thoughts for organizations, which is different, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to collaboration, because you were asking about this, look, the pendulum is always swinging when it comes to how organizations communicate. We unbundle and bundle all the time. Like, so what Slack and Jira and things like that, they're the unbundled version of these huge ERP systems that were designed years ago. But like the pendulum's actually swinging back. We're seeing more compound apps in even tech. So what used to be like something that would take a dozen applications to do, you could see like companies like Notion or like Rippling actually adding a lot more kind of compound application and being more of that monolith, but it just in a more like streamlined, modular, modern way. So what it looks like in the factory is, I think like, Slack and Jira are useful, but a holistic system that's able to move information from design into manufacturing and have referenceability and consistency in these mission critical operations. You can't just rely on a chat app to do that at all.
That's
things
fair.
Break.
Yeah,
things break.
That's fair. Well, it's been 6 years now, and I think like you were probably polishing your storytelling skills, pitching different ideas to the CIO at SpaceX or the VPs, but how has that evolved in this company building time, and what have you learned? Like, what makes a good story? What are the ingredients of a good storyteller? Because we're all selling to someone.
I think the ingredients are a lot of what we talked about here. Mostly, I think the background and experiences investors and people really care about. So where does somebody come from? What are the stories behind that? What drives this person outside of just a business opportunity? I think that's actually one of the lowest rungs on the kind of like ladder of storytelling. Is the business opportunity. I think people want more of a story. I think the story around, especially for us, the market and the customers that we serve, because we have a big level of humility. At the end of the day, you could consider us as just like enterprise software, right? But the story of our customers, which by the way, like I consider ourselves infrastructure to all this really exciting activity happening in the marketplace, right? So we tell the story through our customers, right? We're helping our customers electrify aviation. We're helping our customers transform energy. And modularize energy transportation. We're helping our customers realize the benefits of a significantly lower cost to launch and move manufacturing up into space. So many more stories here. And so that's how we like to tell the story. I think it's with a lot of humility. It's not about us. It's about our customers. It's what we enable. It's what we empower. I believe that as well. Right? I have that level of kind of maybe my background in humility. Like I don't come from anything big or flashy. My parents are immigrants. I watched them work at convenience stores actually, like in the early
Wow.
days, like,
Yeah.
and then grow their careers and work really hard. So there's a level of humility that I will always keep, right? Whether I intend to or not.
So, can you share an example of how you would focus on different elements of the story when talking to a specific customer or investor, but not naming names, but like what are different parts you would focus on based on their background?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good question in that. In that question is understanding
Yeah.
who you're talking to and understanding their background is very important as a starting point.
Yeah. I think a common mistake for first-time founders, especially, is or realtors, is you are so obsessed over your problem area,
Totally,
and your solution, naturally so, that you just like lose sight. It's not about you in that moment.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and you take for granted. I mean, you're compounding like decades and like hours and nights and weekends of all this knowledge about your space.
Yeah.
And you take
You
for
have to.
granted
You need
that-
an outlet.
Totally, but like you could take for granted like the person on the other side has been solely immersed in crypto for the last like half decade or something like that, right? So explaining the problems.
They could still
and
be your investor,
solutions-
though.
They could be.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think it's less likely.
I know, but
Right?
yeah, this is an extreme example.
But yeah, exactly. It's an extreme example for that. But you're right in that like unless you understand and baseline of where they come from.
Hey, crypto whales are into frontier tech now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So true. So but unless you really understand that, so I think you got to start with understanding where the person comes from, and then because we're so nuanced and under the hood, it's not the flashy thing that everybody understands like on the surface. I sometimes like to tell the story through an analogy, right? So sometimes I'll say, okay, yeah, what's your background? Oh yeah, I used to run sales at blah 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 company, and now I'm in investment.
Yeah.
Like, great. Okay, so like how CRMs are very important. Without a CRM, you wouldn't be able to run a sales operation. Like, yeah, I get it. Okay, so similarly in a factory, without a factory OS or an MES, you wouldn't be able to run a factory. That's what you can think of. So you ground them in like why it's important by analogy.
Would you say you've gotten really good at analogies?
I think so. Yeah. I think I've gotten good at analogies. I think I've always been like an analogical thinker.
Yeah.
Probably to a fault.
Right.
I think resonators, which is what we call ourselves.
Yeah.
Actually, at First Resonance.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
Other resonators sometimes get pissed off at my metaphor maze. Yeah.
I think that's the best way to develop relatability with new people, I guess.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we also live in a very complex civilization and society. It's pretty magical.
Yeah.
And but I think there's like very, very few basic principles, and everything kind of flows from that. So like, talking to people about basic necessities, like making an analog to food is actually really helpful in manufacturing. It's kind of like a recipe, and you have ingredients,